It's time to get you caught up with all things sports.
Yes! 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 Yes!
On the throw-in.
One thing is certain. None of this is possible without you, the listeners.
From baseball, football, wrestling, and more, covering local Cincinnati sports stories, news, and highlights.
Why is he always calling me meat?
With your host, Justin Trento.
When it's all said and done, we're going to look back and remember this is what started it all.
Available on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel.
Good play the ball! Good play the ball!
Alrighty, what is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode, the second week of the new year. Tonight it is Tuesday, January 24th, or January 9th, excuse me, 2024. And, listen, I've got to apologize. I'm aware that, last week didn't quite go as planned, if I am to be honest. The intentions was to come back at the beginning of the year, starting last Tuesday, which was the 2nd of January, and do a daily show, 2-hour program show like we normally do, late night though, 10 p.m. to midnight and so forth. Well, Tuesday, you know how that goes. We haven't done a podcast in quite some time. And therefore, we kind of just are getting back into the swing, into the mix of things on the first episode. So, like always, coming back January 2nd, I was not too pleased about the performance that I provided to you guys. Wednesday night did a lot better, but we kind of ran into a little bit of an obstacle. As I've explained, I got my new son. He's 3 months old. He's starting to get into that stage where he's kind of challenging you going to sleep. And, what was a normal, hey, put him down 7, 8 o'clock and he'll go to bed just like that. And, nice and easy is not so easy anymore. He kind of wants to stay up for a little bit, watch a little bit of his TV, and maybe have a bottle, and maybe, depending how he feels, he'll fall asleep. So definitely a bad night Wednesday night. And then Thursday night was another bad night. So I thought maybe, all right, you know what, I'm going to go into Friday and do a show Friday, but with the amount of struggle he was providing, just everything was exhausting, and I kind of just wanted that break and just to kind of regroup. So that kind of led over the weekend, heading into Monday, and here we're on a Tuesday night, yeah, and we're doing a program. Well, the wife and I have had several conversations throughout the weekend about how this program was going to turn out and how we can possibly make this work. And I think right now it is fair to say that for me, the effort is when I'm doing this podcast, I'm all in. I'm invested. Therefore, it's like it's easy to get lost into it and take away from spending time with the family. And that's why I do it so late at night, because I got my kids sleeping. Everyone's kind of already winding down, going to bed themselves. And I kind of just get this time compared to throughout the day where I, am maybe watching, the 3-month-old child that, you may not be able to get a 2-hour, podcast completed with the amount of time he gives you. And the last thing I want to do is 3-month child, either on the show or, crying in the background. And then it allows me in the afternoon. Well, I could always step aside and do a 2 hour quick podcast, like 6 to 8. And I think that works great, but it takes me away from family obligations. It takes me away from, actually, it ends up hurting the family because then the family has to, all right, gotta be quiet. Can't go in the bedroom. He's doing a live video. So this is why 10 p.m.s and mid to midnights work well. And I guess I'll kind of just throw it out there that this is all I know. I mean, I only know right now, and I'm comfortable in doing 2 hour sessions, kind of a podcast where there's breaks in between on a live session. It matches up to the breaks that I put up on the audio platforms, and all the above. And so for me, this is just kind of what I'm used to and what I'm familiar with. And trying to change that right now, I just don't know how that would work. Maybe it would work. I just don't know. I haven't tried it, and I'm kind of iffy about treading water that I'm not familiar with. So trying to make this work. Wife and I was talking about last week. We got to cut back a little bit. I think there has to be some nights where I get more time, more time being able to deliver, do a good podcast, and then more time with the family. So what we came to the conclusion was to do it every other day, which is Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays throughout the week. Now, I didn't do a show yesterday. Obviously, you haven't seen one on this podcast quite yet. Therefore, that's why I'm here tonight, especially around the postseason, especially around the beginning of the year. There is plenty of sports topics to talk about, but I'm choosing to stick with very simple and easygoing topics as I get back into this, so that I make sure that there is enough to talk about, and I'm not drawing blanks throughout the program. So starting this week, and I know this week has kind of already gotten off to a bit of a sloppy start, but Monday, Wednesdays, Fridays will be our typical 2 hour program. Now, if I can't do it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, there's going to be we have room where if I didn't do one last night, I could do one tonight. I'm expecting to do one tomorrow, but if I don't do one tomorrow, I could do one Thursday. And hopefully I could then, if I do one tomorrow, which I'm right now, I think we're on a good, path to do one tomorrow. And if I can, then we'll have Friday off, go to, Thursday off going into Friday. Wrap up the week, get you guys ready for the weekend, all of this and that great stuff. So that is the new game plan that we're kind of working. Now, all of this, I want to just remind you guys that I currently live in Kentucky. I'm not going to pinpoint my location. For those who do not know, I'm not going there. But I live in Kentucky, closer to Cincinnati range. That's the only detail I'll give you. And the reason why for that is that, hey, it's wintertime out here. Now, I know we haven't gotten the most craziest wintertime so far compared to last year, but there are times where internet connection, Wi-Fi connection, does not necessarily connect all that well with the weather that is outside. Okay. So as we get, rainstorms and snowstorms and windstorms throughout the wintertime, if connectivity also plays an effect of if I can get a show done, especially at night, where you kind of maybe not expect a lot of the hassle, but a lot of people are on Wi-Fi. I have Hulu TV, which is going off of Wi-Fi. So if I have the living room playing, I got 3 to 4 phones connected to Wi-Fi. My laptop is connected to Wi-Fi. If I have the TV in the living room and 2 other bedrooms playing, that does eventually occupy a good amount of the Wi-Fi connection, internet connection to service a program. And then plus, hey, if you have a bad rainstorm, we're prone to be knocking out power here. So, but we'll do our best. Here's the other thing I'll say is that we have that website. You could head on over to www.tncsportstalkshow.com. That is www.tncsportstalkshow.com, where you can find all of the news and updates and blogs and videos and audios that, this show provides. Nonetheless, any updates of, hey, when are we going to be having an episode next? Now, I know when I'm in the full swing of everything, I guarantee you that website is my number one priority that I keep up to date. I just posted a article earlier today that we'll probably be talking heavily on this program in regards to the AFC, every AFC recap alone, as we kind of break down and we talk about the upcoming postseason, right? So, if you guys have time, it's an article. You can read it. Head on over to our website. The link is in the link to the website is in the description, both on on all of our feeds. So you be sure to check out our website so you don't miss any updates or news or information, not just within the program, but about the schedule of the programming for the throw-in. So you don't want to miss anything. But yeah, just want to advise everyone, for those who are listening, you're seeing you're going to cut back 2 days. You get 3 episodes a week, at least minimum. There are opportunities where, hey, if I see something that I have to cover right then and there, I'm not creating enough time on this program, I may throw in like just a quick segment throughout the day here and there, hopefully. That just all depends, to be honest. So, but listen, it's nothing bad or nothing new, but we're adjusting to the new schedule. So, well, I basically told you guys what we're really going to be talking about today, and that has to be week 18. Now, I'm going to kind of get into it and ease into it a little bit. There's a couple of things that I do want to get into conversations before moving forward that may take up this first good chunk of the program. I want to go ahead and first off and just congratulate. I know that's a misspelling. Let me correct that here. But I want to go ahead and congratulate the Michigan Wolverines for defeating Washington last night in the college football national championships. You've heard, and I've always heard. Let me start from the beginning here. When I have heard about Michigan for the very first time in my life, I thought that they were probably the most fascinating team because they had the most unique, stylish helmets that I loved. That's the 3 yellow stripes that they have going over their helmets. Well, as I start learning more and more about football, you do note. I also did notice that Michigan was always a team that was highly talked about and had always had some great success down the road. And over the past several years, under head coach Jim Harbaugh, who former head coach for the San Francisco 49ers for the longest time, he then led the Niners to a Super Bowl, which they lost to Baltimore, to his brother Jim Harbaugh, John, excuse me. And he decides to go down to Michigan, and Michigan has had some pretty nice success over the past several years. But the one thing they did not have is a national championship. After defeating Nick Saban and Alabama in a great football semifinals football game last week, they finally got that national championship as they deserved last night. And so a big shout out, a big congratulations to Michigan and their success this season. It's well deserved. But the biggest question and the biggest story coming out of Michigan right now is possibly the future for Jim Harbaugh. Does he choose to go back and head coach a NFL team and go after that Super Bowl that I think he probably also deserves, in my opinion? Or does he stay in NCAA football, college football, and stick with Michigan, which I don't see him going to a different college football team in order to, and create kind of a dynasty in Michigan. Those are my two thoughts. There's plenty of teams in the NFL for him to create a winning championship team. I think a couple of weeks ago was hearing people talk about it, and we talk about the head coaches that are available this year. You look at Bill Belichick, if he considers to continue coaching. You have Vrabel, the Tennessee Titans head coach, who was just announced that he got let go earlier today. And so now you also get, if Jim Harbaugh decides, hey, I want to go to the NFL again, now there's a race to, hey, we got some big head coaches to think about. And this is all going to happen shortly after, the football season ends, because you got to kind of have to establish your own personnel from head coaches to offensive coordinators before that draft in April. So it's not like you're going to wait around. Usually coaching positions take care of themselves early on in the off season. So it's going to be interesting. And I think, if I would love to see Jim out there again coaching in the NFL. And, like I said, there's a couple of teams that throw out there automatically, such as, for example, the Los Angeles Chargers. And I just to think of the pair of what the Chargers could do with Jim Harbaugh and that combination duo, I think that there's a lot to offer. I think that there's other teams. Tennessee Titans just open up a coaching opportunity. I mean, you were looking at the Atlanta Falcons. You got possibly the Chicago Bears down the road. I mean, there's just a handful of options that I think right now line up with the top tier, like, Bill Belichick. And, you just got so many head coaches available. And if Jim just throws his name in the mix, it's going to be that domino effect. These top two guys, I think Bill's on high up on that list. So between Bill and Jim, 1 and 2 guys for as a head coaching position, once they start getting selected and picked up by teams, then the domino effect of seeing where other head coaches go down the road. But congratulations to Michigan Wolverines for winning the national championship. All right, we got to take our first break and overdo it like I always do here. If you guys are watching us on our YouTube page or Facebook page, be sure to hit that like button, share it with a friend. Make sure you no, I'm very active on Facebook and Twitter while we are doing these programs. I got to emphasize that because that's what it is. So check us out at tncsportstalk.com at TNC Sports Talk for our Facebook and Twitter page. Be sure to head over and check out our website where it has all the descriptions, everything you need to know. That is at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. All right, take a first break. Come on back. We're going to talk some baseball here. Headed your way. 2 hours coming up here. You guys are listening to The Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, can't go anywhere without giving a big shout out to our friends over at StreamYard Studios, the proud home of the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. StreamYard Studios, where you can create podcasts, host videos, host virtual business meetings, and even conduct interviews. Check out their free version today at StreamYard.com. Been using them since day one. Don't not go anywhere else. A small little subscription can give you so much more access. Simple things is just click on the button as you can see on the screen. Definitely check them out. All right, we're rolling here on a Tuesday, a little bit of local sports. The Bearcats picked up, actually failed their first conference game tonight. It was actually a blackout or a stripe out night where they, for the first ever home Big 12 conference game, earlier this year, definitely big for football. You saw the Cincinnati Bearcats jump from the I want to say it's AAC down to the Big 12. And boy, didn't the Bearcats in football struggle just a bit. I almost anticipated them to struggle because it's a new division. You are playing better teams. But see, when you're in an AAC and you drop, you go out and you play a team like Texas, or you play a team like Auburn or LSU, that's one or two teams in your schedule that you really have to look out for. When you jump to a whole new conference, you're jumping to teams that you don't really have enough footage of. You can't really get yourself prepared. It's like when the Bengals go play the 49ers, or how often are they playing San Francisco? Quite often. And especially if you're joining the Bearcats, joining the Big 12, which is the Big 12 is a much bigger and better division or conference than the AAC, in my opinion. It's like, we'll talk about the AFC North and how I thought it was a really good division this year. It's just like if the Carolina Panthers, or if, let me rephrase it so I'm not really overstepping, if maybe Detroit Lions joined in to the AFC North, and this is their first time really looking at all of these teams for the, multiple times in one season. So there was an expectancy. And I do have that same expectancy in basketball for the Bearcats this year. But at the same time, I'm just reminded that, they are still such a good team. Okay. And they're, college basketball, they play so many more teams. So the Bearcats do match up evenly with, with teams like Texas. And coming into tonight's game, Texas ranked 25. They're 12-3. Bearcats are 12-3, not even ranked. So I just, this is kind of also where I'm trying to understand a little bit more about that AP poll, is because we also have a team like the Aztecs who have not been elected in the rankings in the NCAA AP poll, which that's the number one poll you go off of. So is either the AP voters are not paying attention, or they just simply don't care how good you are. And that's one of my biggest frustrations when it came down to how do you determine college football playoffs in a 4-man bracket among several different conferences? Because Georgia dominated all year, but up until, because were they even undefeated and they still, did not make it in the playoffs? I don't get that. They were a team that were in there last year. Didn't they win last year? So where's that? And then, it's like, where did Texas come from? Where did Washington come from? And I understand, listen, I'm a big fan of it because you do see new teams, but this is why I'm liking, I can't wait until next year where that playoff bracket goes from 4 to 12. And, we see more teams compete. So you could really see the best of the best, and anything could happen. And we just saw Alabama lose. Who would have thought that Nick Saban would have lost? I wouldn't. To see Nick Saban, Alabama, not in the championship game, nonetheless. I mean, because Georgia is not, was not participating. So you just kind of, there's a lot of questions. Thank goodness for the 64-man NCAA tournament bracket. But it does not help Cincinnati Bearcats. Now, Bearcats are 1-1. They began conference play last week or over the weekend. They won their first game. Their next game is in a week from today at home. Again, they beat, or actually, the next game is this Saturday, January 13th, 8 p.m. on the road against number 14 Baylor. And then the next home game is a week from today, taking on TCU. So a little bit of both for everybody in the upcoming schedule. So I wanted to kind of touch base a little bit with the little bit of baseball conversation. And I know we're still in the off season, but whenever we talk about the new year, right, the next year finally rolls into play. You really you start counting down the days, because we're less than 6 weeks before pitchers and catchers report. A week after that, players report, and then a week after that, spring training games play. And if you're a team that was in the hunt last year, if you're a team that's looking to get better, it starts when pitchers and catchers report. That's where it starts. It starts in the off season of the new year. What have we done to get better? I would talk highly about last year's season because the Reds came a long way. There was a lot of doubts in where the ownership of the Reds was trying to take the organization. And I was one who was really flustered to see everything unravel a couple years ago, post-pandemic, and the comments that were made. And we're just like, we're never going to get out of this rut. When you think you're bringing a team up, you tear them back down. Well, it was, and you got to give a lot of credit to the players on the field, the guys who are fighting for the starting positions, those guys who Nick Kroll and the Castellinis invested into young talent, because it was them who kept the spirit alive, who rejuvenated the Cincinnati Reds fan base. And they started off by reclaiming the fans, and we could talk all over about that. But what's more impressive is that how long they stayed in that playoff hunt, even when things looked sloppy. Okay, you even saw throughout the course of the season, all right, this is when they're going to start failing, but they always managed to maintain the playoff season, just like the Bengals. We'll talk about that tonight. But with that being said, and they come up so short, there was a couple of points throughout the season where we I was scratching my head. I was like, what are you guys doing? Was the trade deadline back in July, and then was the September call-ups where you could claim players off the roster. Now, Cincinnati did claim, what was it, Harrison Bader and Hunter Renfroe for a month. And then the Reds claimed, but the Reds didn't do nothing at the trade deadline. And one of our biggest flaws last season is what we needed to address this offseason. And I think we did quite well maybe addressing it. First of all, it was a very tough decision to depart with Joey Votto. Now, if you ask me, and I've heard this around social media, I haven't gotten a chance to really spill out my feelings about this. When you have a long-time player, as in Joey, who started his career off in Cincinnati and probably will love to finish off his career with Cincinnati, and I almost expected, I I kind of almost wished that he did decide to retire this past season, because to see him on a different team is a bit hard. That's going to be definitely a tough pill to swallow. And he finally has been able to come back and have a decent enough season compared to previous seasons that were, piled up of injuries and lack of performances. To have a decent season where you could finally actually play, you were able to, I would say, end on your terms because you played all the way up to 162 games. You would think that maybe that's your cue to leave, because there's no promises of tomorrow. He could go out there and tear his knee and say, all right, that's it. I wouldn't want him to end his career that way. And I wouldn't want him to end his career on a different ball club. Now, my only suggestion was, and would have been and still is today, is that we sign Votto to a minor league deal. And some point throughout unless we have to mandatory bring him up because Tyler Stevenson, Luke, I don't know about Luke, but Luke Molly, Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand, Jameer Candelario, they all get hurt, and we need a first baseman. I would keep him on in the minor leagues. He can help work with a lot of these younger guys that are coming up through the system that we can surely use at some point down the road. And it's not just criteria, business as normal at first base. He can help them train and develop a lot of these guys. He's a locker room leader. And then unless we we desperately need him up in the majors throughout the course of the year, but then bring him up during the call-ups and let him play the final month of the season as a farewell walk-off and say, this is what we can do for you. I do know this through experiences of talking about this before, because this isn't just a professional wrestling thing. There's that conversation in professional wrestling where you see players even today continue to, athletes today, they continue to find a way to stay in the game. I don't know the guy at the top of my head, but there's guys when they're done playing baseball in the major leagues, which is I would consider the top notch program. When they're done playing baseball in major league, in the major leagues, if they can't find a minor league deal, they go to these independent baseball companies. We have the Florence Yalls down the street, and so you can play there. Or a lot of players will head to Japan or Korea and be picked up on a team out there, just because they want to keep playing as long as possible. And we could very well see that as with Joey Votto. And it's the same thing, because WWE isn't the only wrestling company there is. I consider them the highest, the major league of wrestling. When you think of wrestling, I always think of main eventing WrestleMania. I never come across, hey, I want to main event Collision or Bound for Glory. Oh, those are good stepping stones. But when you're done with when the WWE is done with you, a lot of times you'd go find wrestling work elsewhere. There's athletes, and sometimes they're done with you with age. Sometimes you go to New Japan, you go to AEW, you go to Impact Wrestling. We see that with Sting. Well, Sting, Ric Flair. We have Paul Wright. We got the Hardy Boys. It's just, we've seen, and even like in NWA, and you got like Trevor Murdoch, you got the Rock and Roll Express, who probably should retire, and I don't know if and when they will. All due respect to NWF's Hall of Famer Chris Harris, former WWE talent, former TNA Impact talent, and he still is competing in the ring today. Sometimes when you make your career a sport, you just can find a way to continue doing it until you just absolutely can't do it no more. So I understand where Joey Votto is coming from. I understand that he wants to play again. And you know what? Hopefully he could find a team that he could play with. I just hope that we don't see him drag it out too long if he doesn't find a team with. And like I said, I hope maybe even Cincinnati can find a way to come back, maybe offer him a minor league deal. It would be nice to see him one more time in September. And you could probably get some really good money out of those tickets in September, especially if the Reds are back in the postseason. So we're going to kind of finish wrapping up the Reds conversation after our break. I kind of want to address a little bit more. Have the Reds really done enough this offseason? What can we expect heading into this preseason? I know we kind of touched base with it last week, but I kind of want to just reiterate what we do, what we talked about before we jump into NFL, which is probably most likely taking up all of our number 2 here. So going to take a break. Come on back. Take you to bottom hour of number 1. You guys are listening to the Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Before we continue with our program, bottom half of hour number 1, I just want to go out there and say, winter has been coming around. I know this past weekend, some a lot of rain, snow up in our northern eastern, of the country. So if you guys are in Buffalo and Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit, and you guys are getting hit hard, we just wish you guys a very, very safe storm weather delay, whatever case you want to call it. Because we don't want no one to be stuck in any of this. Luckily, where I'm at, we don't necessarily get hit hard. We haven't gotten hit hard early at all this year. And a lot of it has either passed higher than us or lower. And so we really haven't had to deal with the actual heart of any storms that have passed through, but they're capable of showing up. Tonight it's been raining on, some sort of rain, whether it's mist or actually downpour throughout the day. Today, I know we're supposed to get a little bit of snow in tonight. So, just like I said, anywhere you're dealing with one of these storms, just be safe out there. And we look forward to seeing you on our program. Check in with us. Let us know how it's going. So it's off season. We're counting down the days to Major League Baseball returning. And, the Reds haven't really made any blockbuster deals. And that's something I don't think we really anticipated for the Reds. They've been kind of, from the reputation that we saw last season at the trade deadline, where they chose not to go out and pick anyone up or traded anybody. From the September call-ups, I think it's fair to say that the Reds have this idea that has this belief that their minor league, that the guys and players that they have down in the minor leagues are the ones that are going to lead them to the promised land. And I sure hope so. I mean, I really do wish, I do hope that the guys that they have down, right now they seem to have a good amount of guys. They're coming up to the big leagues. I mean, you already had Tyler Stevenson. You already had, you had Jonathan India, which I think are your two biggest position players. And then you see Jake Fraley coming up. You got Will Benson, who really contributed. He could be, he's an asset, I think, to this ball club. TJ Friedel, you see Stuart Fairchild. But then you got the young guys, the Matt McClains, Ellie Dela Cruz, Spencer Steer, Noel V. Marte, who we saw at that back end of the season. And the only thing that they lack is two things. One has to be just pure experience. They're not in that ball, they're not in every ball game, for the last 3 years to say that they know enough. Now, I expect more out of Tyler Stevenson and Jonathan India this year, but for Ellie Dela Cruz, he's still learning. I remember back in San Diego, Fernando Tatis Jr. Not all ball players are probably the sharpest tools in the shed. You need, this is where this is the second year that a lot of those guys are getting those call-ups and saying, all right, you know what, you worked last year. You brought you up, you gave you a chance, you benefited from last year. But now it's time to start from the beginning, get those 150, 200 at-bats during spring training. Let's get healthy, and let's actually get things going from the start of April. Especially last season, it wasn't the worst that we've seen, but definitely was not the best. So this is how, I'm looking at it. Last year, I didn't think that we struggled a whole lot defensively or offensively. Could we always use another at bat? Yeah, of course. I think we could. Jameer Candelario, a third baseman from Chicago. I don't know how well he fits with this organization. He's a cheap third baseman, especially since we're making that transition from Spencer Steer from third to first officially this year. I don't think, you kind of look at Jameer as a switch hitter alongside with a guy like Ellie De La Cruz. He can give you those at bats. He could give you those, that he could give you the stamina. Probably splitting a lot of it with maybe guys like Matt McLean or even Jonathan India, and you could also put Christian Encarnacion Strand out there so that you have some room to move. He's also could be a potential designated hitter. So there are some room. He could also play first base and then outfield. I mean, I just think we're really stacked in the outfield. And I know that there's been conversations. All right, well, Matt McLean, he's a utility guy. I mean, if Matt McLean is such a utility guy, do you prefer him coming off the bench than you do maybe playing center field majority of the time? If you think of, Stuart Fairchild, Fairchild has a little bit more speed than McLean. Bring him up, let him play center field every day, put him down at the bottom of that lineup a little bit, unless he earns his way to the top. He's a guy who could probably get on base for you and then steal a couple bags throughout the season. If that's the case, then he definitely works around in that 7, 8, 9 spot of that lineup. Then you put out a right fielder. You got TJ Friedel, Will Benson, a couple of people that you could kind of go off of. But then, with Matt McLean in that, conversation, I mean, I think that there's just a lot of options. So I'm not necessarily worried about Cincinnati Reds, their offense or defense. Like I said, could they pick up an at bat? Of course. But now you're just cutting in where you're taking away from what you already have, which is defeating the purpose of the little quote unquote game plan that you have put in set. And I mentioned this last week. I'm pretty confident I mentioned this last week. But the biggest issue that the Reds had last season, and it seems like it's going to be every year, it's starting pitching and bullpen. And it's a combination. It's not one or the other because it's, they both work off of each other. We saw Hunter Green get that contract extension. I thought that was great because I thought that was a sign of maybe they'll give out a contract extension to Tyler Stevenson or to Jonathan India, which is now starting to become a bit questionable about his future with the Red Legs. But, right now there's only 3 guys that you could guarantee. Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft. You got Frankie Montez, Nick Martinez in there. Nothing special to talk about. They're not aces. They're going to be in the mix of your 3, 4, 5 guys in that rotation. The one, and this is all throughout the course of the year in hope that we see Andrew Abbott and Brandon Williamson and even a Connor Phillips work their way to the big leagues at some point, right? We still want to continue to see the progress. The only thing is, the hope is to let them start off in the minor leagues and then work their way up. Same thing with the bullpen. The bullpen was probably hit pretty hard with injuries last season. And I think it's over, everyone's coming back from Tommy John surgery, it seems like. So hopefully there's a better health this year than we'd see last year because, but a lot of those fingers, you can't help but point back to the starting rotation. This isn't, if you were throwing Andrew Abbott out there or Brandon Williamson, I'd understand if they only go 3, maybe 4 innings at best. This is the starting 5 that the Reds anticipate throwing out there, call them opening day, and the 5 guys I just mentioned. They've all have years of experience under their belt, especially when you talk about these 3 guys in Graham Ashcraft, Nick Lodolo, Hunter Green. So what is the expectation? Last year was probably their first year where you can honestly say that, all right, first year of reigning the team by yourself and not too bad. But now this year is kind of like, all right, we need you to fall into your place in this rotation. And that is, we need a minimum. And I say minimum. Stop babying to the 5 innings, minimum 6 innings at best. Okay. When you only give your starting pitchers 4, 5 innings an outing, and when they get into a jam where they don't last 4 or 5 innings, and it's not just one pitcher in the rotation, it's all 5 of them on a nightly basis, you put a lot of work on your bullpen. And I felt like there was a tremendous amount of work given to the bullpen. When your bullpen eats up more innings in a series than your starting pitcher, that's a problem. With that being said, I mean, you need to find a way, or you need to have a standard where these guys got to pitch 5, 6 innings, 5 to 6 innings a night to give your bullpen a setup situation in 7, 8, 9, or hey, let's just keep us alive throughout the day. Because you only got 8 guys in there. And normally you only want to see them in a series once, maybe twice. And look, I could tell you the clear difference right now that a winning ball club, a team that's going to go to the postseason every year, a team that is going to go to the World Series. You take a look at the Dodgers. You take a look at the Phillies. You take a look at the Astros. Okay. Take a look at any team who's gone to the World Series recently and who's had a lot of success. Milwaukee, for example, even Chicago and the Cubs. What do they have in common? Their rotation gives you solid outings each and every night. And they don't overwork their bullpen. And that doesn't go to say that, Hunter Green doesn't have a bad outing. Everyone has a bad outing. I'm not arguing that Hunter Green, cannot have a bad game. But Hunter Green, Nick Lodolo, Graham Ashcraft cannot have consecutive bad games every week. Find your slump, find the routine, get out of the jam. And I'm serious. Like, 6, you got to hold them to a standard this year. More. They do. Well, I think so. Amelia was a good addition. Hopefully, Lucas Sim, TJ Antone can all pitch in, and you brought back Buck Farmer. But it's going to be that bullpen. It's going to be that pitching that really will determine how well. If the Reds can perform the way they did last year, it's going to come down to how well did their bullpen and their starting pitching work. So I guess that's what I'll talk about. All right, coming up hour number 2, let's kick things off, talk about how well that AFC North did. Making some history with the Cincinnati Bengals picking up a victory on Sunday. We'll talk about that. Hour number 2 begins next. You guys are listening to The Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, welcome back to hour number 2 here. I want to give a big shout out to our friends over at Spreaker. Spreaker is from iHeartRadio. It's not only a listening platform, but it's a distribution platform where podcasters, such as myself, can create an account and upload podcast episodes. All of our podcasts have been uploaded to Spreaker. And within that, we're allowed to set ads to be monetized and ad exchanges. You're able to see statistics and all this good stuff. And the sources of distributions that Spreaker provides are phenomenal. From Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Hey, obviously they're paired with Spreaker, iHeartRadio, so you get 2 for 1 right then and there. You got Spotify. I believe that's all your major big platforms and all the tiny ones also. So if you are not listening through Spreaker from iHeartRadio, we're on there. Check us out, The Throw-In. But then also give them a chance. If you're a podcaster, you're looking to create content as podcasting, check out Spreaker.com for more information. I'd like to give those guys a good shout out. Hour number 2 here. And things kind of work just a little bit too good. Wouldn't you say here in hour number 1, talk just enough time of baseball? And we'll definitely, there's a lot more questions. I got a good topic to talk about tomorrow regarding the Reds. And it's just about like a prediction, a little bit of my opinion here. But we reserved the last hour of sports talk here this evening to football because the playoffs have been set. All 18 weeks have been completed, and we're ready to go. I'm ready to go. Whether you're a specific fan for the Steelers or the Ravens or the Chiefs or the 49ers, if you're just a fan in general, I think they say it's the playoffs. Playoffs. All right, before we talk about the playoffs, we got to give a big shout out to the NFL Walter Payton Man of the Year Award from Fan Vote is Ted Karras. What an offensive lineman he has been for this team since picking him up. And that was one of the biggest concerns that we had heading into, years ago, that I feel like we have gotten better at. I'm not saying that we're perfect at it, but I feel like, this year we did a little bit more protection. But here's my argument to that. And it will always be my argument because I hate people saying our offensive line sucks. You know what? To a point, I will hold them accountable for not performing at their peak, capability. And I'm paying all these people some good money. What my argument will always defend the offensive line is that they only are there to block for 3, maybe 5 seconds at best. The play is designed to be kind of completed within the next 5 to 7 seconds. So in a sense, depending on what play you're running, if it's a run play, then it should be done. You should be only given 3 to 5 seconds. If it's a pass play, I say anywhere between 4 to 7 seconds at best. Okay. And this is coming from someone who's played offensive line, okay, in high school. You got to get rid of the ball. Okay. You got to either get out of the pocket or get rid of the ball because these guys are designed to make that U shape so you can step up in the pocket and jolt the ball. That's it. If you are anybody in the pocket for 10, 15, 20 seconds, okay, you do not get rid of that ball, do not blame your offensive line. I am sorry. I will testify that. I'll take that to my grave. I am sick and tired of it. When I watch some of these games, both Joe Burrow, Jake Browning, nothing against them, but you spend way too much time in the pocket because you're trying to find an open man, and then you get sacked or you get brought down or you have to throw the ball away, and guess who gets pointed fingers at? The offensive line, because they didn't block. Okay, they're in a crouch position. They don't get a chance to get like one of those, like if you're in on a race, we kind of get that leading star. You're in a crouched position, and then you have to go from there to standing up. And matter of fact, you take a step backwards to begin the play. It's just, I hear it all the time, and I think the credit does not get given enough to these linemen, and they're just like referees. They only get pointed out failures, never success rates. All right. AFC, this division, I just put it up an article specifically about this division. You can read it at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. I encourage you guys to head there. But this division, one of the best divisions I think you've seen all season. I know coming into the year, there was the expectation of the Bengals and the Ravens. The Bengals are still trying to get back to that Super Bowl that they probably should have won against the Rams years ago, and they just get stopped at the AFC Championship. So this year, I think, was important to keep that rhythm going, and I think it hurts a bit more because not only they couldn't get that rhythm going this year, reflected by injuries, but now they didn't find a playoff spot that I think everyone is a little bit shocked about, and now I think there's a little bit of the future question because there are contracts and free agents coming up that may change the dynamic of how this team is going to be put together next season. We already saw a little bit of it this past offseason. I know there was a bit of a concern in regards to it. To see it happen again, and there's going to be changes. And I think that's what I think fans are going to be scared of the most. And this window of opportunity for the Bengals, you can kind of start seeing it close its door every time Joe Burrow gets sacked, every time you lose a player. This window of opportunity of a Super Bowl win does kind of go down each and every year. But to be honest, Ravens right there in that mix. The two teams that did surprise me getting into the playoffs had to be Cleveland, had to be Pittsburgh. I know I don't really talk a whole lot, especially highly about Cleveland, but they come in second place and they come in that fifth wild card spot. They're going to take on Houston on the road. Indoors, I'm presuming, because it's going to be in Texas. This is a big year for Cleveland. This is a big year for Deshaun Watson, even though he had, and this is also a big year for Joe Flacco. Okay, because Deshaun Watson really did not get a chance to make an impact last year. He had to serve that suspension that took him 2/3 of the season. And pretty much by the time that he came back from his suspension, he was the team was pretty much practically out of contingency in the playoffs or heading to the playoffs. So last year was a dud. And Cleveland, they took a pretty bold move by getting Deshaun Watson, but letting go Baker Mayfield, which, by the way, we will see Baker Mayfield and the Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting Philadelphia this weekend in the wild card game. But then Deshaun Watson gets hurt. It's important because it's a tank. Cleveland wants to say we made the better decision by letting go Baker, picking up Deshaun. We had to get over this obstacle. I'm sure Deshaun had a lot weighing on his weight, on his shoulders heading into the season, because it's like, all right, you spent 2/3 of the season last year. We'll give you a pass. You have to perform this year. And he did quite well for himself until he gets hurt. And then, maybe a little bit of a desperate move signing Joe Flacco. And he looks like he never lost a step after leaving Baltimore years ago. So, and they're calling it it's redemption tour. So I am very, very impressed to see how all the marbles for Cleveland has kind of fallen into place and given them a playoff spot. And they're facing Houston, and it's going to be a good matchup. And I'm excited. And then Pittsburgh. This is now 17 consecutive games, seasons with a winning record under Mike Tomlin. There was a article on CBS Sports saying that Mike Tomlin may be stepping away, which is going to be a crazy thing. I think Pittsburgh, until Mike Tomlin can prove you otherwise, and I think Mike Tomlin has a better head on his shoulder than Bill Belichick, in my opinion. Mike Tomlin, I think, will start understanding when he cannot do it no more. And he has the energy, he has the passion, he has the motivation to continue to carry this team. And when you may not make the playoffs each and every year, but when you have a winning record, it's something to talk about. It's not a losing record, it's a winning record. Well, they just got lucky and squeezed themselves into a playoff spot. Thanks to an additional playoff spot, they squeezed themselves into another postseason opportunity. And the fact that he's also having this consistency and this much success away from Ben Roethlisberger, I think says a lot. Future Hall of Famer as head coach in my books. And I think he's done well holding, Kenny Pickett, Mason Rudolph accountable, two quarterbacks, that we really didn't know what we're getting. I mean, we knew what Mason Rudolph had and what he had to offer, but he's also stepped up this year. So shout out to them. The Ravens finished the season off 13-3. Cleveland finished off the season 11-6. Pittsburgh finished off the season 10-7. And the Cincinnati Bengals, who did fight their way. It wasn't a lost cause. Jake Browning came in when Joe Burrow got hurt halfway through the season, and he carried himself pretty well. He lost 2 games, and those 2 games were to the Steelers. And so, as a matter of fact, there was actually a point in the last couple of weeks that Cincinnati actually held a wild card spot momentarily. And, you just had better teams overcome. Now, Cincinnati came into week 18, 8-8. And it's notice to mention that, listen, when you create history like this, Cleveland was playing they sat out Joe Flacco. They were playing a lot of backups because they're getting ready for Houston this weekend. But it's still another thing for Cincinnati. You finish off the season strong. I think that's important, right? You finish off the season strong with the win. You finish off the season strong with the winning record. Although, you finish off the season avoiding a complete 6-game sweep in your division. So you go 1-5, which I'll take, even though I don't like it. You also, you come into the last game of the season wanting to, in front of your home crowd and just take care of business. Hey, I found the solution to the Bengals' success. Have them face everybody's secondary team. They'll go 17-0. But with that victory this past weekend against the Browns, okay, they get a chance. They made history in the AFC North. AFC North is the first division since the AFL-NFL merger in the 1970s to have every team finish above a 500. Now, that may not mean a lot to a lot of people, and that may not mean anything to Cincinnati fans. But to think that the 4 teams out of 17 games that means they dominated the entire league. And that is something that shouldn't go unheard of, shouldn't go unnoticed, untalked about. That means that means Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, and Cincinnati outside their division, because obviously you look at the division for the Bengals 1-5, doesn't say much, but that means they faced the AFC South and they conquered them. That means they had to beat tough matchups like the 49ers and the Rams, who are in the postseason this year, by the way. So, you talk about beating Houston and beating Indianapolis and beating Jacksonville, those three teams that were competing up into this past weekend, it went down to the wire. Jacksonville loses. Houston beats Indianapolis, knocking them out of the playoff picture. Jacksonville loses, knocking them out of the playoff picture. A lot of fun stuff going on. And so you look at where Cincinnati and all these, these other three teams gone. And yeah, you could sit there and get upset because you did not win the division. You did not make it to the wild card, but realistically, you finish off the season strong with the winning record, and you've had a lot of success against the league. And if that tells you anything, under the conditions of injuries and your quarterback sitting out half the season because of a season-ending injury, and your backup quarterback held its own, and you guys fought. It meant that you guys fought every last game, and just because you could have gave up hope, but you didn't. So if you're taking anything away from all this, you got to hold your head up high, in my opinion. Let's take a break. Let's talk about the AFC, NFC brackets, as it's playoff time this weekend in Super Wildcard Weekend. You guys are listening to The Throw-In on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. You know what? I gotta say this. The NFL season has come and gone, and it's the same way that I explain it for baseball. You're excited and you're stoked when it comes. You start watching games. You start going through the scenarios and the seasons and the ups and downs and the heartaches because your team doesn't play good. And then next you know, you see the postseason, you get excited about the postseason, but then you're reminded that the season is over. That you have to just wait. And I think that I think the only for me the only happy thing that keeps me going is, other than the Super Bowl, has to be the fact that one, WrestleMania is in April, but two, spring training is about to be underway. So there was a lot of scenarios that went down to the wire this past weekend, which I really, really enjoyed a lot, because from Saturday football with Pittsburgh beating Baltimore, Houston beating Indianapolis, Houston, practically knocked out the Colts from the postseason, and they needed Jacksonville, who, by the way, lost to Tennessee 28-20. If Jacksonville would have beat Tennessee, and it was a back and forth game, and this is what I liked about it too. It's like, all right, if you're watching the Tennessee and Jacksonville game, Tennessee has a motive to play for, because they're trying. Hey, their season is over with. They're firing Vrabel. Okay, so now another head coach opening position is up for grabs, but they were able to end their season off with the winning record and with, knocking the Jaguars out of the postseason. And if you would have imagined, in my mind, sitting there thinking that at the end of the season, Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars did not own that sound. Last season, what I saw, I for surely thought it was coming into this season. Maybe I'm wrong. But what I saw last season was, I saw the Jaguars finding their own with Trevor Lawrence. And I thought this was going to be a click thing, that they were going to get on the same page. You were going to see them just dominate the South, just like how Tennessee's done it in the past, just like how the Indianapolis Colts did it with Peyton Manning. But then, we saw a division that we really do not know where Tennessee's going. That's why they fired their head coach, because they have the past two losing seasons. Obviously, he hasn't gotten the job done. He hasn't improved his team, his organization. And you've also seen a lot more success in 1 year. Colts picked up Richardson, and he gets hurt. So you go to Minshew, and this is a guy who I don't think people have any faith in. And yet Minshew went up to the final game of the season and said, "Hey, listen, we have an opportunity." Okay, when you're Tennessee and you see that happen, you're like, "Oh no." Okay, or what about you give up the number 1 pick to go take C.J. Stroud when you could have had Bryce Young, and now look, Houston's coming out to be. We knew that, listen, Houston did this whole crazy transition back in April, where they picked up C.J. Stroud after giving up the number 1 pick to the Bears, or to the Panthers, so they could pick up Bryce Young. Then they turned back around and picked up the defensive player. Okay. So you got 2 guys, and there was, a lot of people were, and I even agreed that a lot of people were claiming that, yeah, this is in the right direction, but they're still ways away. And look at that. They have clinched the AFC South. They play this weekend against the Browns. And you know what? They're not just a forgotten team. They're not just a team that, they're lucky to be in, or that, okay, they're in, but don't hold your breath over them advancing. I don't care what record the Cleveland Browns or that 5th seed team holds. You're going into Houston territory, and you're going into, a wild card game where everything's on the line. You're going against it all. And, they have earned their way into the postseason. So I'm not banking that Cleveland walks into Houston and takes the game, although if you ask me right now, I am favoring Cleveland over Houston. But what I'm saying is that, scenarios happen. They got a second life. They're going to make the most of it. Pittsburgh finds themselves in it because of that scenario. You take a look at the NFC. A lot of things had to be in place. Carolina had the opportunity to beat Tampa Bay, knock them out of the postseason, because New Orleans just took away Atlanta 48-17. And then Tampa Bay gets shut down. Now, let's remind you about Tampa Bay, Baker Mayfield. This was a guy who I didn't hold my breath for this season. All because he did not live up to his expectation last year. He did not live up to what he preached about. The reason why he got out of Cleveland, he went to Carolina, and within weeks later, he got released. In my books, though, he's redeemed himself. I'm very pleased in his performance. I'm very pleased to see him, finally finding a rhythm, finding a team where he will be appreciative. It definitely was not easy. You're not playing in an easy league. You got Derek Carr in New Orleans. But they found a way to clinch the number 4 seed, the South. So don't bank on that. As we move down the line, you see some of these other games. Green Bay needed a win, and they won. Dallas beat Washington. Philadelphia, which we'll probably talk a little bit more later on this week. Philadelphia lost 27-10 against the Giants. They fall into the 5th seed wild card. They'll go to Tampa Bay. Dallas has that 2 seed. They'll host Green Bay. So this is how those standings, I think, have approached themselves. Let me just pop up the picture here. All right, so number 1 seed, let's start off in the NFC. Number 1 seed, San Francisco 49ers. You followed by the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions. And trust me, listen, the 1, 2, 3 teams right here in the seeds, phenomenal, great performance. We saw a lot of potential last year coming out of Detroit, especially after they cost the Packers a playoff spot. And they really they look like they're climbing the bar. I don't know if they're the team to go to the Super Bowl this year. Right now, I'm in favor of San Francisco, to be honest. But to see Detroit kind of mixing things up, I'm very happy with. And then Tampa Bay squeezes right in there. Philadelphia has lost their legs a little bit. The Rams, boy, they impressed. Not saying that they're a winnable team either. They go over to Detroit, and it's going to be. Here's the interesting about this wild card this weekend between the Rams and Detroit. This is going to be the first time they face in the playoffs with not Baker Mayfield, with Jared Goff, the former quarterback for the Rams, as the quarterback for Detroit, and with Matthew Stafford, the former quarterback for the Lions, now the quarterback for the Rams. So, and then you got the Packers, who, Jordan Love is, I think there was a lot of question about if Jordan Love, he has some pretty big shoes to fill from the success that Brett Favre had from the success and that Aaron Rodgers had coming as a backup. I think there was a lot of I think a lot of people put pressure on Aaron Rodgers, but he came out and he actually just came out and just loved playing the game and just didn't show any signs of all right, there is pressure on me. So Jordan Love has really stepped in, has an opportunity. You think about this, you're facing the Cowboys. And if you know anything right now about the track record with the Cowboys, they lost the last 2 years against Green Bay or against San Francisco. They claim to be this whole new team. They've done so far hold up to that standard, that potential. But the postseason's where it counts. And they've shown that they've lost on the road and they've lost at home. So realistically, there's just, you got to go in there, you got to beat the first game. And you beat the first game, you got to win the second game. If you go win the second game, you got to win the third game. I'm almost there. I'm just not there taking Dallas too seriously yet. Hey, kudos. You did great during the season. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And still in a sense of, all right, yeah, it's spring, you got 17 games only to, get ahead, but it's a marathon in the sense that you got 3 months to get there. Postseason is a sprint because it's one and done. The AFC, on the other hand, like I said, I knew Baltimore was going to be that good. I think they're either going to take the division or they were going to take a wild card spot. I didn't know they'd be the top team, not only in the AFC, but in the National Football League in general. Baltimore picks up a 13-3 record, number 1 seed, easy going in. And that says a lot coming from, a lot that was said about them last season. I felt that once they signed Lamar Jackson, all their troubles went away. You could say, Lamar Jackson, John Harbaugh, the owners of Baltimore could say whatever they want to say about the situation at the end of last year, how they went into Cincinnati and they just lost, they just fell off. But I think a lot of what happened last year was in retaliation of not having a contract negotiation completed. And the longer you let it sit, I thought it was going to be hurting the ball club. But Lamar, Baltimore, they finally come to an understanding, an agreement. With that, they were able to add players around Lamar that he would enjoy playing. And, this was a team, like I said, I knew they were going to be good. Just how good, I don't know. Buffalo question, this was definitely not the same Josh Allen as in years past. I think that when we look back on this, and this is going to be an off-season conversation, but Josh Allen did not have this, a similar, he had a down year. But they still found a way to make it into the postseason. They beat Miami 21-14 Sunday night. They dropped Miami down to the 6th seed of the AFC playoff bracket. Now they host Pittsburgh, and from my understanding, it's supposed to be snowing, cold. Kansas City, and this is where that AFC is starting to change quite a bit. A lot of I heard this said before with Kansas City. They did not seem like a unified unit throughout the course of the year, and I think that's a bit alarming if you are a fan of Kansas City. But it's also here's the opportunity if you're a team like Miami or you're a team like Pittsburgh or Cleveland or anyone else that may be facing them this year, that all right, they shown cracks in the shield. Can we squeeze through those cracks in the postseason and find a way to knock them off? Because a lot of people apparently think that that Kansas City has that switch. right? That's the big question this back half of the season. Does Kansas City have that switch? Are they just going through the motions, knowing that they would have made the playoffs regardless, even though they didn't clinch until late in the season? And that come playoff time, they're going to turn on that switch on and just run through everybody. You know, we talked about Houston, Cleveland already, Miami. I think when it comes down to Miami, they dominated a lot of teams that did not have winning records this season. And when they did face teams with winning records, they struggled. They continue to struggle. They lost against Buffalo. And I think if that is to say anything heading into this postseason, okay, heading to Kansas City where it's 10 below compared to your Florida weather, then I think this could be the end of the line for Miami this year. I mean, I think heading into the postseason this year was good enough alone, considering that your starting quarterback was ruled out of concussions throughout the, on and off last year. And you guys, the organization itself was questioned about how they were operating business in Miami. Then you get Pittsburgh and the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. I think it's a win-win for them. Another winning season. If they go out and they win, great. If they could beat Buffalo, I think, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, even match up in the cold. It's going to all come down to the fear. I mean, it all comes down to fear mistakes, right? I think that's good. But there you go. That is your AFC NFC playoff bracket. All the other teams are now trying to figure out what they're doing next year, and who knows? Let's kind of dive into that a little bit as we head to the bottom of this program. You guys are listening to The Throne on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Alrighty, we got to do a little bit of TLC because we couldn't have done this program without the help of Canva. Canva has created a video creating platform where I have been able to create these breaks in between. And through a subscription today, you guys could create similar videos, presentations, and a whole lot more. Check out canva.com for more information. Also, like to give a shout out to Epidemic Sound. Discover your world-class artists, composers, and bands. Find the perfect soundtrack and give your social media accounts the music they deserve. Epidemic Sound is a royalty-free music link. And for more information, check out epidemicsound.com. You know, at the beginning of the episode, I kind of want to just reiterate. This is what happened at the beginning. We guys kind of talked about the update of moving forward with the program. And I explained to you, my son, between everything that's going on in the household throughout the week, doing the show in the living room again. I got, my kids 5 days a week. And all that stuff. I thought it would be better to do, hey, the 5 days a week at night. But after talking with the wife, I have a 3-month son that apparently right now can't go to sleep without Elmo. So one of the things we did not want to do was to have him on Blippi or Miss Rachel. Quite often, we we kind of just have got so annoyed with those shows on YouTube, and it's nothing to those shows. Those are great shows, and they really do wonders teaching these toddlers and infants of all these things. But we're trying to come up with other ways to do it, and I'm more of a guy who takes things to the past. So if you are so I'm like, I grew up on Disney Junior. I grew up on, I was the type of guy that grew up on like The Bear in the Big Blue House and Roly Poly and what is that nighttime, on oh gosh, I can't remember it, but on those older shows. So got one day, the wife got Elias, which is my son's name, he got him into the Bluey, which I'm coming to open. At the beginning, I didn't like that show, and there's something that still doesn't sit right with me. But he is attractive to it; he's glued to it. And then I decided, hi, why don't we turn on Sesame Street and Elmo? And as soon as he saw Elmo, like every time, it's like his go-to shows that he can just listen and watch all day long, like absolutely all day long. It's you'd be surprised. He'll go from fussiness to nothing, and he knows when it's time to watch his shows. And those are the shows that we kind of have been getting him on. And a couple weeks ago, we picked up a little Elmo doll, and apparently right now we can't find it. And last segment, I don't know if you caught it, but the wife was kind of searching around in front of me, seeing if she could find it, and she couldn't. So hopefully we find it after the show. But it's so amazing because I've had 2 daughters, and they were kind of all okay, Disney princesses, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse. Let's do Sophia the First or Doc McStuffins. But now it's like a whole new, and then mine is 5 years apart. This is now just kind of a whole new atmosphere. It's definitely different than it was 5 or even 10 years ago. But man, it's been some incredible times already. But anyways, our schedule has been cut down to 3 days a week. The initial goal is to carry the show Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 10 p.m. to 6 p.m. or 10 p.m. to midnight. Excuse me. And then having Tuesdays and Thursdays off, but unlike earlier this week, didn't have one last night. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make it up. I'm going to have one tonight. I'm going to plan on trying to have one tomorrow. We got to go out a couple things to do at the courthouse tomorrow and the clerk's office. And so, we're going to take care of business and, just take us throughout the day. Sometimes when you're up all day, and this is the trouble of doing a show late night, you up all day and you get tired. And I'm 28 years old, but I feel like an old fart, and I get tired at 6 o'clock in the morning. Or at 6, I get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I get tired about like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And if I don't have my old man's nap, it's a hit or miss on these episodes. So that's our new dynamic. But hey, listen, as I mentioned to you guys, I've talked a lot about this throughout the time. You guys could always check out our website at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. That is www.tncsportstalkshow.com. You can find all the news, all the audios, all the videos, all the blogs, anything there. That's going to get updated. That gets updated quite often. Be sure that you could also follow us on our social media pages. That's really more so just for posting stories, like congratulating Ted Karras earlier today, posting the playoff bracket on our Facebook page or Twitter page at TNC Sports Talk. All right, so I don't know. I'm just kind of reading through here. Off-season alerts. So what do? We're in Cincinnati area, so we're just kind of sitting here twiddling our thumbs. What's next? What's the next move? We know that Tyler Boyd is there's a potential, more unlikely he'll be leaving. So this dynamic trio between Jamar Chase, Higgins and Boyd may not be, which I think, like I said, I explained this earlier, that window of opportunity is kind of creeping down. But, last year we saw an impact on the defense. This year, what are we going to see? What type of changes we see? I will tell you this. Jake Browning, and I don't know if I have enough time to go on a full-on rant about Jake Browning, but Jake Browning really held his own for the Bengals this back half of the season when Joe Burrow got injured. And I would argue each and every time, and against anyone, that he probably should have started off the season in Cleveland against the Browns instead of Joe Burrow. Because I just didn't feel like Joe Burrow was 100%. He also has a bad track record with the Browns. So if you would have took a loss like they did, okay, with Jake Browning, it's no harm, no foul, because you kind of, if you lost, you come back home, you kind of have just that much better, that much healthier of a Joe Burrow to go up against the Ravens. But then if you pick up a victory, it just sweetens the next week a little bit better. And I just think like that type of stuff, I don't feel like Joe Burrow was ever really able to 100% get back to his normal self with his calf injury. And then, things lead into a hand injury, which I don't know if it could have been avoided, but things like that just kind of like, well, you play the what if factor. And we could, and then let's say you picked up the win against Baltimore or Cleveland, you're sitting at 10 wins now and probably in a better position than Pittsburgh. So, like I said, the whole what if factor, it comes into play. And I just think that, I'm not saying anything bad about what happened. I just think that stuff could have been a bit different, which would have led to a different result. Other than that, like I said, you still got to be impressed with how the season turned out. They had a really good season through what was thrown at them. And, I don't know if you want to wish Baltimore, Cleveland, or Pittsburgh good luck in the postseason, but to see that your own division has that much success to where, although you have a positive track record this year, so does your opponents, and they're in the postseason, then I just say that listen, I'm proud of them, and bring it on next year. I just think it creates that much more of an intense rivalry for these teams. Like, hey, because Deshaun Watson's not going nowhere. I think the Steelers are sticking with Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph 1-2 punch combo, and you got Lamar Jackson that is now he's probably gonna be the guy to beat the next year, and the Ravens. So you have all of that in your backyard, and you got to face them 5-6 times. Off-season conversations that we're gonna start looking at. Obviously, there's gonna be that quarterback scenario where it's gonna be the race. If Bill Belichick leaves, finally parts ways with the Patriots, if Jim Harbaugh decides to come back to the NFL, what team is he going to go down? And then all these other Brian Flores, and all these other coaches that become available now because, is Chicago going to move forward with their head coach? We saw Tennessee is, the Chargers looking like they need a head coach. So there's a lot of questions. Those are going to be answered early on, but then there's going to be those bigger questions that have to be answered too. I know that there was a big conversation about moving along from Broncos Russell Wilson, who was benched the last part of the season, and help to stay healthy. Does the Bears decide to move on from Justin Fields? Is that given enough time? And if so, is Justin Fields done? Where does he go? Probably one of the biggest quarterback predictions that I had faith in, that I don't know if he was just with the wrong team, but he just didn't work out. And I just don't know. Is he the guy for Chicago? And if so, how can they turn that thing around very quickly? Program this afternoon. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether it's live or it's later. Thank you guys for downloading and listening to us. Be sure to hit that like, share, and follow button. Hey, and be sure to check out our website at www.tncsportstalkshow.com. Until next time, you guys have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay dry, stay warm, and take care. You guys are listening to The Throw-In here on the TNC Sports Talk YouTube channel. Take care from the studio, StreamYard Studios. Have a good night.